So today, to give structure to the idea about God, I'm going to discuss divinity in terms of its relationship to the universe. And before I define God, I need to explain my use of the word personal. Going back to English class, a noun is a person, place, or thing. So a person is a special type of noun, one that thinks and communicates. A person is capable of change and interchange and sharing information. Impersonal is a being who has no need to communicate, or a thing. It may be a concept, and it may not even be a noun. It may be a verb or a process. So with that in mind, I offered the chart that's in the front of your order of service. I just got to walk you through the whole chart, and then I'll go through bit by bit. If you believe divinity is personal and believe that the universe is impersonal but different from divinity, you might be a theist. If you believe that divinity is personal and believe that the universe is personal and different from divinity, you might be a panentheist. If you believe that divinity is personal and the universe is personal and the same as divinity, you may be an animist. If you believe that divinity is impersonal and the universe is impersonal and identical or the same as divinity, you may be a pantheist. If you believe divinity is impersonal and that the universe is impersonal but different from divinity, you may be a deist. If you believe that divinity is non-existent and that the universe is self-existent and then no need for personal or impersonal relations, because then you are an atheist. And then if you think that divinity is self-existing and the universe is non-existent, in other words, we are just a dream in the mind of God, nothing is real, you may be called a Brahmanist. Now, charts are helpful because they have clear lines and there's clear, distinct categories. And they're helpful for analysis, but we must remember that they are a simplification, and reality is always more complex. And just like a road map is an inaccurate representation of reality, the simplification may help us find our ways to destinations. When I describe a category, it will appear as a bright yellow city on a map. It'll be clear, but when you arrive at these concepts in real life, you will find them surrounded by suburbs, and the exits won't be clearly marked, and you won't be able to tell where the suburbs end and where the city begins. Theism is the belief that divinity is personal, that God or goddesses talk and they interact and they change as the drama of divinity continues. But the universe, including humanity, has no agency. It's impersonal and it's different. There is a definite creator and creation. And you find examples of this in Judaism and in Christianity and also in Islam. And they use the image of a potter and the clay. In Judaism, in Isaiah, it says, "But now, Lord, thou art our Father, we are the clay, thou art a potter, we are the work of thy hand." In Islam, it says, "To God belongs all that is in the heaven and on the earth, and whether you make known what is your mind or hide it, God will bring you to account for it. He will forgive you whom he will, and he will punish whom he will. God is able to do all things." And in Christianity, in Romans, "Hath not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another unto dishonor?" And what you see in these images is that there is no real human agency. Humanity doesn't really have personal choice in this. That, especially in that last thing, that God is the one doing the choosing, making the pot for honor or dishonor. And you think of that famous Christian hymn, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. I once was lost and once was found. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed." What happens in that song is that the person has grace happen to them, which causes them to believe. And so that even in that construct of Christianity, the agency all belongs to God. There's a real sense of God is the only one who has personal choice, offering grace or withholding grace. In purest form, theism has God in that absolute control. Humans may think they are persons with freedom, but they are ultimately objects at God's disposal. If divinity is all-powerful, humans have no ability to win its favor. If it's all-knowing, it knows our choices before we can make it. If divinity is unchangeable, then none of our efforts can really have any effect. In theism, the Creator creates and creation is created. The Creator has personal agency and the created have none. Panentheism offers the possibility for interaction. Divinity is changed by interaction with the creation. Now, the Hebrew Bible is full of stories of God's interaction with his chosen people. In Jonah 3:10, it's written, "And God saw their works, and they turned from their evil way. And God repented of the evil that he had said he would do unto them, and did it not." See, in this passage, God is not even portrayed as all good. He was planning evil and then changed his mind. Traditional Christianity builds on this classic formulation, in the classic formulation of John 3:16. "For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life." That whole notion that at one point God had this plan of giving people the law, saw that that wasn't working, changed his mind, and sent Jesus. And so for many Christians, Jesus is the bridge across the chasm of God who has agents and people who are merely subjects. The great innovation in the teaching of Jesus was transforming God from a distant king to a loving Father. By becoming human, divinity raised the level of interaction between Creator and creation. Panentheistic Christians are called to be co-creators of the kingdom of God. And this is evidenced in the prayer of St. Francis. "Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there's despair, hope. where there is darkness, light, and where there is sadness, joy. In Judaism, the work of Martin Buber in his classic book, I, Thou, talks about changing the relationship with God from an I-it relationship, and also our relationship with other people from an I-it relationship to an I-thou relationship, an interpersonal relationship which allows for more loving and more flexibility. And so when you are looking at the divide between liberal and conservative Christianity, you can see that divide often along pantheistic or panentheistic or theistic lines. The theistic is asserting God's authority, and the panentheistic is asserting the love of God. And so the one is emphasizing the law, and the other the spirit of the law. And so that sense of God is unchanging, and you just get right with God or else, or that there's a relationship there and you interact, and it might not just people, it might be the whole universe that's interacting with God, and God is changed by the relationship. Because think, if love actually exists, if any of you have been in love, if you're in love with someone and they never change, then your love has no effect on them. And can it really be called love? So that sense of panentheism allows a changeable God that can be changed by love. But what if the Creator and creation are the same? Divinity is everywhere and has personal agency. And every element of the universe has personal agency. This results in animism, which is present in Native American culture when the hunter asks the spirit of the deer to forgive him for having to kill them to feed his family. And is present in Shintoism when the kami spirits are located throughout nature and one prays to them. And we're seeing this in a worldwide phenomenon on Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go is based on samurai culture, which is rooted in Shintoism. And so there's these series of gods and goddesses that are located in various places, and you find them and you capture them or you pay tribute to them. And my goodness, we have had more people gathered outside our temple this past week than we have in many years because of this vestigial of Shintoism and animism that lives in our culture today. And you see this also in the Greek and the Roman gods and the Hindu gods who correspond to these different functions in nature. It's no accident that in Pokemon there are water Pokemon and fire Pokemon and ice and different elements. Because every being is related to the great being, and every soul is part of the oversoul. Divinity is dynamic. There's all these battles going on between all these different forces, and it's always happening. And so this is happening, and it's a personal relationship. People are involved. You pray and you battle and you're angry and you're mad, and it's very much a drama. If you've ever watched or read the Greek mythology, there's lots going on there. Sex and violence and between gods and humans, and there's all this stuff that's happening. Because it's just there, and it's really interpersonal. But then which brings me to the next category, pantheism. It also posits that the Creator and the creation are the same. But they're both impersonal. Baruch Spinoza, in a 1677 book, Ethics, wrote, "God is the immanent cause of all things, never truly transcendent from them." But neither are actually personal. He also wrote, "The order and connection of the thought is identical with the order and connection of the things." In other words, God is not a person to be worshipped or obeyed, but nature has its principles which are identical with God. It's dynamic and allows a lot of freedom, but God is the very existence in what we live, and you recognize it, and you live in that freedom. To say God does not exist is to say existence doesn't exist. Spinoza's thought was similar to Confucian thought found in the I Ching. I read from the I Ching. "Vast indeed is the sublime creative principle, the source of all, coextensive with the heavens. It causes the clouds to come forth and the rain to bestow its bounty on all objects, to flow into their respective forms. Its dazzling brilliance permeates all things from first to last. Vast indeed is the sublime creative principle, source of all, coextensive with the heaven. It causes the clouds to come forth, the rain to bestow its bounty on all objects, to flow into their respective forms." Albert Einstein wrote, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the lawful harmony of the world, not in a God who concerns himself with the fate and doings of mankind." Spinoza had a theological rival of his day, besides the church and the synagogue, who did not like him that much. But there was another breakaway from that, the Unitarian physicist and deist Isaac Newton. And his thought was as different as Einstein's physics of relativity is from Newton's mechanical physics. Newton envisioned God as separate from creation, a great watchmaker who set the wheels in motion. When modern Christians talk about intelligent design, they are in debt to Newton's thought. And even though Newton envisions God as a separate being, he's not very personable. Newton's God is a tinkerer who's locked away in his heavenly workshop, creating perfect perpetual motion machines, which he can then ignore as he moves on to the next one. We should venerate this God for his wisdom and pray, but to pray to him is almost an insult. And Thomas Paine, a deist follower of Newton, wrote about prayer, "He takes it on himself to direct the Almighty what to do, and even the government of the universe. He prays dictatorial. When it is sunshine, he prays for rain, and when it is rain, he prays for sunshine. He follows the same idea in everything that he prays for. For what is the amount of all his prayers but the attempt to make the Almighty change his mind and act otherwise than he does? It is as if he were to say, 'Thou knowest not so well as I.'" So, in the mind of a deist, to pray is to say, "Hey God, you don't know what you're doing, I have a better idea." And to a deist, that is the height of irreverence. Thus, the deist simply is grateful for providence, that word that you read in our founding fathers, when they talk about God, they often use the word providence. The capital of Rhode Island is named Providence. Very few people talk about providence when they refer to God. But that's essentially it. It's a fairly neutral, impersonal term. It's that which provides. We have stuff, therefore it's providence. But it's not much more personal than that. And you live by the laws that have been set up by providence. Now the atheist goes a step further than both the pantheist and the deist. They insist that only the impersonal universe exists. There's no providence to thank, no overarching principle to interact with. Like deism and pantheism, they focus on the present reality, but makes little philosophical speculation about anything beyond what can be measured. And then there's the ultimate challenge to these last three quick categories of pantheism, deism, and atheism. Because, does existence exist? It seems like a nonsensical question, but it's one of the great questions that divide Eastern and Western religion. And after the Beatles went and hung out with the Maharishi, you could see it in their lyrics. John Lennon singing, "Imagine there's no heaven, it's easy if you try. Imagine there's no countries, it isn't hard to do, nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too." And in another song, "Nothing is real, nothing to get hung about." George Harrison has a song called "Beware of Darkness." And in that song, he actually names the Hindu principle, beware of Maya. And Maya is a Sanskrit word for illusion, the world of illusion. And in ancient Hinduism, the concept of Brahman, the great self, the oneness, in which there is no duality. And we live in this world of us and them, thinking that we are separate and physical, when in reality we are united and divine. The idea of a reality of a unified divine I call Brahmanism. It has its roots in Hinduism, but it has influence over the other Eastern religions such as Buddhism, Taoism, and Shintoism. From Hinduism, as long as there is duality, one sees the other, one hears the other, one smells the other, one speaks to the other, one thinks of the other, one knows the other. But when for the illumined soul, the all is dissolved in the self, who is there to be seen by whom? Who is there to be smelled by whom? Who is there to be heard by whom? Who is there to be spoken by whom? Who is there to be thought by whom? Who is there to be known by whom? Divinity is that, this is from Shinto, from Kanetomo Yoshida, from his book An Outline of Shinto. Divinity is that which was there before the appearance of heaven and earth, and which gives form to them, that which surpasses the yin and the yang, and has the quality of them. This divinity, and thus the absolute existence, governing the entire universe of heaven and earth, yet at the same time dwells within all things, where it is called spirit, omnipresent within human beings, it is called mind. In other words, human mind communes with the divinity, which is the ruler of heaven and earth. The mind and divinity are one and the same. Divinity is the root origin of heaven and earth and the spiritual nature of all things. And so we have this question about what is real. And it plays out in so many ways that on the banner in front of our church we have Black Lives Matter. And that is a statement that accepts the categories that were set up by white people who made the category of white and black and have treated black people different as if they didn't matter. So it's a statement to remind the dominant culture that Black Lives Matter, which is responding by people who say, well, all lives matter, which of course is true in the sense that there is no duality and we all should be together. But if you thought all lives matter, you were talking the same way as Jefferson was when he said all men are created equal and own slaves at the same time. What is your definition of all? And so we live in this dual reality of seeing categories, but then kind of knowing that the categories are false. I've divided these different notions of God into categories, but then I also have to know that all these definitions are arbitrary and somewhat false. And then my grandson, who is defined by our culture as black, posted on Facebook, "No lives matter. You are all, because the universe does not care." And I responded with a meme that said, "You matter, but divide yourself by the speed of light squared and you become energy, using E equals mc squared. You take matter and divide it by energy and it becomes, well, you physicists will get this. E equals mc squared. If you are matter, and you times yourself by the speed of light squared, then you are no longer matter, you are energy." And so this kind of thingness, matter doesn't exist, nothing matters because it's all energy. Energy moving into matter. What's personal, what's not personal. So we left with this confusion, which is why I attend a Unitarian Universalist church. Because I firmly believe that my language for the ineffable, the unspeakable, my language for that which is beyond words is just as inadequate as yours. And I will defend your right to stumble around with your inadequate concepts of the infinite with me. And I refuse to kill or advocate anybody being killed for our human striving to understand who we are.